Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the U3a radio podcast with me, Nick Bailey. If you're listening for the first time, it's our monthly look at events throughout the U3a network, which currently has over 1,000 U3as and almost 400,000 members. And as you'll hear with each podcast, the organisation has such a wide variety of projects and interest groups. This month, we learn about a game which is already very popular in America, but is only just taking hold in this country. It's called Pickleball.
People say it's a mixture between table tennis, tennis, and badminton.
We discover the opportunities of the speaker swap scheme, and we find out why the Swan is such a symbol of love.
Vast majority of swans, they mate for life. They do a little dance before they mate. Sometimes you'll see them face each other head on and produce that fantastic heart shape.
But first, a small but mighty community of writers in Wales is celebrating after one of their number became the latest in the group to win a top award. The four women from Gilwern u3a's creative writing group in Monmouthshire have only been together for a couple of years, but have already won a slew of local and national awards between them, including Harriet Hall, who recently won the U3a short story competition with her tale called Cinderella, What Happened Next? The other members are Bev Woodman, Linda O'Keefe and group leader Kay Blackwell, who invited Ella Watts to join one of their meetings.
So we started in February 2021 on Zoom, I hasten to say, because we were still socially distancing. We didn't know each other at all. We lived in the same village, but none of us knew the other. So that was really how we got going on that. Mm. One of the difficult things, it was my suggestion, Clever Club, but you've got to start a group and start with something that perhaps somebody might find interesting. And how do you start off a writing group? And I thought about this quite hard for quite a while. And in the end, we picked something which worked extremely well. We used a painting. It's a famous painting. It's Degas, the absinthe drinker. We started our first week with that. I said, write the story of the lady in the picture. Well, Harriet, what was she doing?
She was wondering if she could possibly escape from a demanding and difficult husband who wasn't really interested in her, just wanted a housekeeper. And she was very skilled dressmaker. And so she's hoping that she could escape via a relation outside Paris.
Yeah, mine was a young widow, I think, wasn't it?
Yes.
You were whose father-in-law was making unsavoury overtures towards her. Yeah.
Yes, he wanted a housekeeper. He wanted cheap.
Yes, he wanted a housekeeper.
With benefits.
Yes. And mine was, she was out for the evening with her husband, and he'd totally forgotten it was the anniversary of their little girl's death. Bev.
And mine was, it was speed dating in a pub, and he was a miserable sod, and he'd only not even bought her a drink.
That was our first week, and we all, it was hilarious. When we read our stories on the following fortnight, 4 different styles of writing, fun, and it just went from there.
Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting painting to start with. I'm just wondering if you were all on the absinthe at your very first meeting.
Right now, they can't get hold of it.
The four green fairies, yeah.
Is it just the 4 of you?
It is, yeah, at the moment, yes.
And you've obviously become great friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely.
And you meet in each other's houses.
We do indeed, yeah.
So you're just coming up to your 2nd birthday. So how did you get from that to the U3a creative writing competition in a relatively short time?
Well, skill.
Yes. No. We're very talented.
Skill and modesty.
I'm modest.
Yes, I'm modest.
We drink a lot.
No, we don't. No, please ignore that one.
We just set a different project on a fortnightly basis, picking the topic from a list of possibilities. And
where do you get your list of possibilities from?
Anywhere and everywhere. Off the internet, if we're walking down the street and we see a dog having a wee or something like that, then we think about that.
I mean, we do have a list. I try as a quote group leader. It's like herding cats,
Yeah,
you
she
know.
fails
You try to
miserably.
get them into some format. We do have a list, which somebody might have said, like rewrite a chapter of an old book, somewhere you left your heart, what would you have done if you hadn't done that, and whatever. But I mean, we had odd topics that somehow came into conversation, like local limericks. Now
Oh,
then,
yes, local limits.
bear in mind, local limericks, we tried to keep it very local, very, very local, within about a 5 or 6 mile radius of where we live. Welsh place names, not easy. Harriet, can you remember any of yours? Yours was one of the rudest ones. No,
It's not-
I
it's not
joked.
No,
I joked.
There was a young man of Crickhull who had difficulty emptying his bowel. They said you must try this concoction from rye. The result, an odour most foul.
It was one of these exercises. Not all of us like poetry. I will say that straight away. Not everyone finds poetry easy. But once you started, I found doing the washing up, you would suddenly think of a
Yes,
line that would rhyme with somewhere else. You know, it was great fun to do. Great fun.
How much do you write between meetings? You know, how many words are we talking about here?
So
Oh,
for me personally, as little as possible.
This is Bev speaking.
Yes, I write what comes into my head and very, very rarely correct it. I wrote mine not in the early hours of this morning, but last night, and I'm right to a deadline, and I'll just come up with something and I'll write it. And once I've written it, it's done. I can't be arsed with going back through it and looking at it and doing all that. That's never going to happen. So I write like that, and I probably, out of the 4 of us, I'm a very flippant writer, and I just write usually fun and usually quite rude things, and probably on the edge of trying to shop. That's me.
Well, I've definitely got your measure.
Excellent.
She's wonderful.
Yeah,
You're a
what you see
wonderful
is
member
what
of the
you get.
group.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I tend to write lots of notes and ideas down in between projects, and then come up with whichever idea suits the project the best, and then I write about that.
So who actually chooses the topic?
Whoever's hosting the meeting gets to choose, and then if we don't like the idea, then we just say no.
Get another one.
Have any of you had any training whatsoever? Have you done a course or?
No.
No, we've all have other lives where writing is not free. We're free to write what we want now.
So, for instance, I used to write, and Harriet used to write, not knowing each other at all, but we would write lots of reports for court. So you would be doing, you know, very purposeful court report writing. So for me, this is completely wonderful. Linda, what was your?
Yes, I used to write a lot of educational resources in my job, and again, report writing, that sort of thing. So this is certainly a way of freeing up your imagination.
I expect you're always very aware of your audience and how things are going to be interpreted when you're writing.
Well, our audience are the other 3 members. We each, for example, we've got our stories to read that we've produced last week or last fortnight, and we read our stories. We say, wow, you know, what always comes across is the fact that 4 different people can take a topic and produce 4 totally different aspects of that. I mean, unbelievable. Just to give you an example, the last one, a horrid suggestion from our hostess.
They hated
horrid
me for it. Waking up with a supernatural power.
Now that took us out of our comfort zone. Absolutely. I mean, we thought, what? And that was over
they
Christmas.
were cross with me.
We were very cross.
That was over Christmas and New Year. So you can imagine we were all sort of, ooh. But the result was amazing because Harriet produced a story
of, I was somebody waking up and finding she could talk to her cat, or her cat was talking to her, and the horrors of actually being able to hear animals in every situation, and how painful that was. Yes, that was my story. And yours?
Mine was someone who woke up and discovered they could see newspaper headlines 48 hours ahead. So in other words, he was able to view the future, but couldn't do anything about it. He used it initially to start winning the lottery or putting bets on horses. But when he couldn't influence earthquakes or children killed by a dog attack, he started to get in a terrible situation. But that was my story. And yours?
Yes, well, my character could developed gills and could swim underwater unaided. So shot off to the Great Barrier Reef and did some wonderful deep sea diving.
So competitions, I mean, I believe you've been in the press.
We've been mentioned.
We had a go. Put it this way, on our year one, you get sort of information from the Welsh u3a about short story competition. And I think I mentioned it to the group. And then Linda had a go and I had a go. We sent one off and we were staggered, and I do mean this, to find we'd been shortlisted. And in the end, Linda came third. That was in Wales. So when the national u3a came up, we said, go for it, girls, let's have a go. I think 3 of us had a go. Linda and I this time, no. But of course, dear Harriet was shortlisted. And we were all there with Bubbly at Harriet's on the night when she was announced winner. It was a fantastic evening. Wonderful.
Absolutely staggered I was.
Amazing achievement, really. What was the story about that won you the prize?
It was an alternative ending or shift in the Cinderella story. We'd set ourselves a different ending for a fairy story. And so I'd worked out this one where Cinderella began to get cold feet quite early on. She moved to the palace and began to realize just how dislikable her prince was.
And what did you do, Linda, for that?
Yes, I did Cinderella, whose boyfriend at the time turned out to have a shoe fetish and kept stealing her shoes.
It wasn't her it was after, it was her Jimmy Choos.
Yes, it was her Jimmy Choos.
You did Rapunzel?
I did Rapunzel, and mine was ridiculous, but it was funny. And I think I should be after Amazon, because the film they did with the ladder was what I thought of before they did, about how she got out. She thought, I don't know why I'm here, I'll just order something on Amazon and I'll get a ladder and I'll sod off. And so that's what I did. And then now anyway, that was mine. And then what did you do?
I did it was actually the Pied Piper.
Oh, the Pied Piper.
Yes, except that it was a modern scientist
Yeah.
who'd invented a wonderful cure for all known coronaviruses.
Yes.
And nobody gave him his just desserts or just rewards. So he let loose in the Central America another virus which killed all the wheat.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Sorry.
That was really cheerful.
That was a really cheery one.
Well, they're certainly a lively bunch. The Gilwern u3a's creative writing group. And congratulations to Harriet Hall for being the latest winner of the annual u3a short story competition. If you want to read her story and the other 11 finalists, just go to our website at u3a.org.uk. This year's short story competition will be launched in April. Every month, the u3a runs a series of online talks on a variety of topics. One recent subject, which proved popular with members, was on the Swan, the subject of a new book by the author Dan Keel. Joanne Watson has been talking to Dan about why he's attracted to this magnificent bird.
They're simply beautiful to watch. They're stunning, graceful, they're majestic. Anyone who's seen them take off and land on water will testify that they're hugely exciting and dramatic to watch as well. Aside from the aesthetics of swans, they're steeped in rich history, art and culture. So Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, you've got Hans Christian Andersen's Ugly Duckling. They've got hugely complex personalities, so all kinds of contradictions, both a lover and a fighter. For example, love, they're an emblem of love. You see them on Valentines cards, jewellery. Vast majority of swans, they mate for life. They do a little dance before they mate. Sometimes you'll see them face each other head on and produce that fantastic heart shape. But on the flip side, they're vicious fighters. They're capable of drowning your dog. They're one of the few birds in nature which deliberately kill their own species. Around 4% of swan deaths are caused by swan-on-swan attacks.
If swans mate for life, you must come across some regular couples, as it were.
Yeah, that's right. When I lived in London, I watched a pair of swans build a nest, successfully raise 5 cygnets, which is a really good number, 5. The average is around 2 that survive. So they usually have around 7 eggs. One of the most fascinating stories I've come across was, I think it was in Newbury, where unfortunately you do get a lot of vandals during the summer. And it was a real problem during lockdown when you had a lot of very bored kids sort of roaming around the countryside with slingshots and pellet guns. And there was a female swan that was shot with a pellet gun, and the charity Swan Support rescued it, took it away, operated on it, and about a week later reintroduced it to the same nest. And they captured a moment on video where the male swan greeted its partner for the first time, and they did a little dance. It's a really sweet moment. So they are mostly faithful to one another. It's not true to say that all swans mate for life, but certainly most of them do. I think the monogamy rate is around 85%, so that's much better than humans.
One of the other things they always say about swans is that they could break your arm. Is that true?
Yeah, if I had £1 for every time someone had said to me that a swan can break your arm, I'd be a very rich man. But when you delve into it, there's no real evidence that they can, but there's no evidence that you can't either. So I did try to tackle that in the book. And I think it's fair to say that the only part of a swan that would be capable of breaking your arm would be its wing, because I think a beak could give you a nasty peck, maybe leave a bit of a bruise, but it couldn't break your arm. But I found out that to break your arm, and a force of between 3,000 and 4,000 newtons is required to break that bone in a healthy adult. So using some pretty crude maths based on my GCSEs, which is force equals mass times acceleration, I put in some assumptions that the swan's wing weighs around 0.7 kilograms. The speed of a swan's wing is about 160 flaps per minute. And it's got a wing stroke, which is about 1 meter tall. So if you throw that all into a series of formulae, you can estimate that a swan's wing generates around 80 newtons of force. So I'm going to stick my neck out and say, no, that's not possible.
Another of the legends is that all swans belong to the king, as it is now. Is that true?
It's not quite true. So you have to go back hundreds of years to get to the root of this one. But in 1482, King Edward IV passed a law declaring all swans were the property of the crown, unless gifted to someone by the crown. So he gifted some to wealthy landowners in exchange for support on various matters. Incidentally, he kept the best looking ones for himself. But as time passed, there were certain livery companies which ended up with quite a few swans. And there was one called the Vintners Company, which dealt with the buying and selling of wine, another one called the Dyers Company, which dealt with fabrics. As the centuries passed, swan ownership became less and less popular. So it was eaten hundreds of years ago. It was eaten quite a lot. But as the years rolled on, people realised that turkey and chicken tasted nicer. It was easier to cook. They were easier to breed. Swans have a tendency to taste like fishy mutton if they're undercooked, and very tough if they're overcooked. But the Vintners and Dyers continue to this day to claim their portion of the swans on the River Thames.
I remember quite recently seeing the body of a swan on a dual carriageway. It had obviously been hit by a car. Are humans the greatest threat to swans?
Yeah, without a doubt. They're not particularly good flyers. I mean, they're strong flyers, but they're not maneuverable. So they have these huge wings that make them very sort of powerful, fast flyers. But if they do see an obstacle, whether it's a building or an electricity pylon, they can't necessarily get out the way quick enough. The other problem they have is what their eyes are on the side of their heads, which gives them almost 360 vision, but their frontal vision isn't fantastic. So quite often they don't even see the obstacle. But by far the biggest threat to swans is the fact that human beings have built on huge swathes of their land. Swans need a square kilometre for their territory if they're going to nest. And even sometimes where a development is built alongside it, that can disturb the carefully balanced water table, which then renders their territory unsuitable, which then means they take off and fly to try and find a different type of territory, which brings them into contact with some of the other risks that we've just discussed, so buildings, pylons and cars. So you can't stop all development. There's a shortage of homes in this country, so they need to be built somewhere. But the RSPB can work with the developer to make sure that swans and humans can live together in harmony.
Dan Keel, and Dan's book is called Swan, Portrait of a Majestic Bird, From Mythical Meanings to the Modern Day. One of the fastest growing sports in America is pickleball, and it's now starting to take off in this country, including with several u3as. Dutch-born Michael de Groot from Wire Forest u3a wrote to us recently to say he'd set up his own pickleball group, and Michael joins me now. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Nick. Glad to be here.
What exactly is pickleball?
Oh, everybody asks that question, and I asked the same question in May of 2022 to a podcast guest that I had on my podcast called Share Your Story. And it was an American business person, and he was is a pro commentator for pickleball in America, and he plays pickleball. And I literally went, "What is pickleball?" So he tried to explain, but explaining it over a podcast, you have no idea what it is. So I looked it up quickly. People say it's a mixture between table tennis, tennis, and badminton. I'm none the wiser when people say that. I wanted to see it. So I went onto YouTube and I saw it, and I was amazed. They play with these paddles. They got plastic balls with holes in them, and it looked really, really good fun. So I went, okay, I'm going to try and find out where I can play pickleball locally. Surely there must be somewhere. Nope, nothing. The nearest was miles away, like an hour's drive away. And I went, well, that's not going to work for me to want to play pickleball. So I got in touch with Karen Mitchell at Pickleball England. Yep, there is an official body called Pickleball England. It's a non-profit, and they're trying to grow the sport in the UK. And they said, I'll tell you what we'll do. We've got a county champion manager volunteer who will come over from Staffordshire to Worcestershire and show you everything to do with pickleball. I went, wow, that's amazing. But now I needed people. And I'd already joined the u3a in January of 2022. And I asked the badminton group that I was started playing with in February, I said, do you want to try pickleball? And they went, what? And I said, no, it's a real thing. And they went, yeah, okay, we'll have a go. It's about time we learn another racket sport. And so we had loads of people turn up for this taster session, and the rest is history.
Well, I still haven't got it, really. Is it played with a net?
Yes. So imagine, first of all, it's played on a badminton court, and you play to the outside lines of a badminton court, let's say in a leisure centre. It's played outside as well, but in a leisure centre, badminton court. And the net is about 34 inches high. And so it's a small net, like a tennis net, I guess, but a specific height it has to be. And you play with a paddle and you serve cross court. And it's got the old badminton scoring system, which I wasn't familiar with, to be honest. So you only score on your serve when you're playing it.
You say it's played with paddles. I mean, is it wooden paddles? So is it played with something like table tennis bats?
Well, that's how the game started in 1965 in the USA. A couple of dads devised this game to keep their teenage kids entertained who were bored. And they started with, table tennis bats. So imagine a table tennis bat, but a slightly bigger handle and a slightly bigger face as well.
Can you describe the ball again? Because I still haven't got that image. You said it's a ball with holes in it.
Yeah, it's they call it a wiffle ball. As I think it's an Americanism, but it's a round plastic ball. Imagine it's slightly bigger than a tennis ball, and it's got I don't know, 40 holes in it or something, like little holes in it. And there's a specific ball for indoors and a specific ball for outdoors. For outdoors, the holes are a little bit smaller because you do get gusts of wind outdoors and you don't want the ball flying all over the place.
Does it particularly appeal to people of a certain age?
Well, this is a really, really good point. The answer is yes. It does appeal to a more mature u3a person over 50, generally speaking. I know we're not age specific, and it's not strenuous. You do a tiny bit of running around on court, but there is also a technique called, now I'm really going to confuse you, Nick, it's called dinking, which are little short shots over the net very, very softly, because the ball doesn't bounce very high. So if you want to smash it, as people would like to do in tennis or in badminton, you can't. You're either going to hit it into the net or you're going to hit it out. Now, by doing the little dinking, which is at the front by the net, it means you're not racing around the court like a gazelle. You're literally doing a bit of walking, a tiny bit of running, and it's not strenuous when you're hitting the ball because it's so light. We literally have people in their 80s playing it.
Well, you've spearheaded something, and it's sort of quite a revolution. You've taken it on very seriously, becoming a coach, and who knows, you could spread it around the country and even spread it in your home country of the Netherlands.
Yeah, you never know.
Michael de Groot, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Nick.
Next month, Sarah Goodall continues the pickleball theme when she'll be practicing her dinking by attending a training session at Swansea u3a. As I said earlier, Michael wrote to us to say that he'd set up his own pickleball group, and if you'd also like to let us know something happening in your u3a, you can get in touch via communications@u3a.org.uk. You may remember some time ago we spoke to Mike Stringer about a u3a history speaker swap. That scheme proved to be so successful that the speaker swap has now been extended to all subjects. Peter Clift caught up with Catherine Stevenson from Newcastle u3a, who explained more.
Well, it certainly is an exciting venture, which all u3as can take part. It's a trust initiative to swap speakers so that we have talks, endless topics, and we can do that between interest groups or monthly meetings or whatever suits other u3as. I'll give you an example because it is reciprocal. One u3a might contact me and ask about a particular topic that they would like me to talk about. If not, they can look at the list that I have on options and get back to me, and I would do a talk for the interest group at the monthly meeting, and one of their speakers would swap with me. Now, at the moment, it tends to be the speakers actually on the speaker swap list that are swapping over. But I think as we grow, as this initiative grows, we will find that we're doing different things with different presentations, and it's already happening.
So the speakers, are they u3a members or just speakers?
They are u3a members.
And how does it work? Presumably you do it on Zoom, I guess.
Geographical locations are no longer a problem, obviously, since we use Zoom. So it connects most u3as, but it's not just Zoom bound. It also could be in-person meetings. It's of advantage to every u3a member if they're on Zoom, possibly in person or even as a hybrid meeting. So the topics are many. Now we are looking, the Trust is looking to expand the number of groups. There are many unusual subjects in u3as. Now I've come across several. Amateur radio. You might not need a radio for that. You might just have the interest. It might lead to having one. Metal detecting. So you can see how it's opening up avenues for members who never even knew this existed.
Catherine Stevenson. And if you'd like to join the scheme, you can find out more on our website at u3a.org.uk/speaker swap. And that's it for this episode. My thanks to Ella Watts, Peter Clift, and Joanne Watson for the interviews, and also to Ella for producing the podcast. Until next time, this is Nick Bailey saying goodbye.